Okay, I'm about to do it. I'm doing it.
Hey everybody, I'm Fantasia. Welcome to my channel, Sewing with Tay. I have a ton of new subscribers. Hey y'all, welcome. I have a ton of new subscribers. So I really appreciate y'all for subscribing to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I go by Fan. I'm a designer, formerly a technical designer, apparel technical designer to be real specific. I like to make videos about sewing machines, learning to sew alongs, DIYs. I made this, etc., etc. I do also like to make videos about wife life, mom life, specifically boy mom life, starter lock life. I'm like about to hit my 3 months, and I like to make videos about the gym and stuff like that. If that is your cup of tea, hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you'll know when I'm posting new videos. But let's get into today's project. A lot of my new subscribers have come from me making a hand knit cardi, a massive one, a colossal hand knit cardi sweater. And then I made a non massive one that's a little bit more economical, easier to use. But today I wanted to try to make a bomber jacket because that's what I saw. Not a bomber jacket, but like a shorter jacket. I don't want to call it a bomber jacket because that seems real specific. Um, just a jacket with a shorter shrug. So we're going to try that, but I'm going to attempt to do a new stitch. Now, I'm going to be very clear with y'all. I am not a knitter. I am not a knitter. Speaking into the mic. I am not a knitter. Uh, but I've taken one knitting class in college. So this is not my area of expertise and everything I'm learning. I'm learning from other people, from peers, from friends, etc. So eventually I will get back to regular sewing content. But I do enjoy these things. They're super easy, super fun, and it's actually like an Arctic blast right now in Columbus, Ohio. So it is cold. So I'm enjoying making these warm, fuzzy things, and I've used the extras to make little, fuzzy warm things to keep around the house. So today we're gonna make a jacket. I did not do on previous videos is measure how long this is gonna be. Since this is gonna be shorter, I'm going to measure, how long I want this to be. And I'm thinking like hip level, like maybe here. We'll go there. Oh, I have my tape backwards, but I like to use double-sided tape. That for that reason. It's like 29 inches, so we'll go with that. 29 inches in length. Okay, similar to my last video, I'm using Bernat Blanket Extra Thick. It comes with roughly, I forget, 72 yards on here. So I'm hoping that this is enough. And I have two, but I'm hoping that like 1.5 of these is enough for this. This is significantly shorter than the maxi length one that I made before. And most of y'all are new here. I love green, everything green. So you'll see me use a lot of green fabric, everything. So this is green. It's not actually, this is my birthstone color, but it's not actually my favorite shade of green, but this is all I had. So this is all I got. Here we go. Starting off, I'm going to unravel some yarn, a couple yards, and then I put it in a box on the floor so that it doesn't roll all over the place. And then I'll just pull it from there once I get started. The same as our other video, we're going to start with a slip knot. So you're going to twist and then grab the working yarn. The working yarn is the yarn that is attached to your ball of yarn. And I wanted my loop to be like 1.5 inches, 2 inches long. So you'll see me kind of adjusting here. I saw someone have a tip of holding the knot or where they join and then pulling through your working yarn. It helps keep the loop sizes consistent. So I tried that. It felt kind of weird, but again, this is all new to me, so everything feels weird. So I don't know if that's something that regular knitters do, but my goal was to make this more consistent loop size, make sure my stitch tension is good. I later learned that I'm doing a blanket stitch, and the blanket stitch seems to me, in my opinion, seems to be a little bit tighter, or like it scrunches up more than the regular stitch. So I feel like my jacket might be a little bit on the smaller size, but I didn't know that at this point. So here we are. I measured it to about 24 inches just to make sure. And you're going to continue the same way we have done in the past. I'm trying to triple check counting my loops. You want to make sure you have an even number of loops. I actually ended up with 14 loops. You saw me write down 15. I realized later that I needed 14 loops. You needed an even number of loops for the blanket stitch. And someone mentioned in my comments that I should be knitting face up so that I can see the stitches. So this is why you'll see me kind of flipping the start of the chain stitch up around so that I can make sure that I'm doing it the right way. So this here is the beginning of my first row of stitches, and I don't feel like I'm the greatest at this. Like, I feel like I don't really sometimes understand exactly where the loop should go, but I like to just call myself a sloppy sewist sometimes. Like, I know how to make things right, but sometimes they might not be very specific. And I don't know if that translates into the knit world. I know some people are very specific about their knits and their sweaters from a professional point of view. But I'm like, okay, as long as I get my 14 stitches. So sometimes you see me kind of thinking this through, like, okay, does it go here? Does it go on this side? Because it's a little bit confusing for me. I don't know about anyone else. But my goal is I just need 14 loops, and I don't want any big holes or gaps or anything. So long as I get 14 loops and they look rather relatively close together, I think I'm pretty good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is very confusing, so pay close attention. We're making a blanket stitch, and you have to crisscross your stitches. You're basically going to be working in twos. So your first two loops, you're going to always use your working yarn to loop the second one first, and then you're going to take your first loop and cross it across the second one on the front and make your new second loop. So the next two loops, you're going to always thread the second one first and then cross the first one over and then thread that one. And I noticed I was having some issues again with my thread tension because you have to make sure the loops are long enough to be crisscrossed. So you're going to thread the second loop first. You're working in twos. This is why I said you had to have some even number of stitches. And then you're going to crisscross the first one, pull the working yarn through. Yeah, I said it was confusing. We're going to keep doing it. I'm not going to speed this up any because I want you guys to get it because I thought it was so cute, but it was difficult. Okay, two more loops. Second loop first, and I learned you can kind of pull it closer. So you don't want a big gap in the back because I feel like it made some of the stitches loose. So first loop, across the first loop, across the second loop, and then pull the yarn through. Two more loops, thread the second one first, then cross the first one, and then pull the working yarn through. I think we got a couple more here. I'm just going to keep doing this with you guys. We got two more loops. Thread the second loop first, and then we're going to, I ran out of yarn here. We got to pull it out, make it easier to thread these. Thread your second loop first, crisscross the first loop, pull it on cross, and then use your working yarn to pull it through. I think I might be at my last loop, or no, I have two more, or I have, it looks like maybe three more. Oh, two more. So, okay, we're going to cross that last loop there. Then we're going to cross the first loop. That first loop now becomes the last loop on my chain. And okay, now we're going to start to go back the other direction. Same as always. But that last loop, we're not going to crisscross. We're just going to loop it as normal to start the next row. And then you start by crisscrossing the next two. So that first one on the end is always going to be just a single loop. It's not going to get crisscrossed anymore. All right, so we got our first loop here. We're going to just pull the yarn through like a regular stitch. And then you're going to go to your next two stitches, same as the other one. And you're always going to make sure you're going to do the second one first. So not the one right next to the loop you just created. You got to crisscross it. So we have those first three stitches right there. So we're going to find the next two. You're going to do the one farthest away from where you started, the second one. And then you're going to grab that working yarn, pull it through. Grab that first yarn, and you're going to crisscross it across that second one and pull the working yarn through. You can kind of see the pattern start to come together here. And yeah, that's pretty much it though. We're going to keep doing this. I'm going to see if I can zoom in a bit. Okay, it's a little bit closer. Hopefully that helps. So you have two loops here. Your loop that's on your left, you're going to loop that one first. And you're going to take the loop on the right, pull it across that one, and then you pull your working yarn through. Ta-da! And then I'm just making sure everything looks right. It's a little hard in the beginning. You're going to take the loop on the left, loop it, thread it first, then the loop on the right, you're going to pull it across and then thread it. I was hoping I could do this a lot faster than what I did, but this took me some time. So be patient. Two more loops, pull the left loop through first, get your right loop, and then pull it through again. And there you go, your crisscross. Make sure your loops aren't too big, but also make sure that you have enough room to pull them across as needed so you don't lose any stitches. This is my last two, and you're going to do the same thing here. Left loop first, then the right loop, and then just going to do the last loop regular. So I did that all the way till I got to 29 inches. This is what it looks like. This is the back panel. I was getting kind of excited because I'm like, yeah, I did it, but I realized this is getting real narrow, and I found from the other ones that they stretch and give, so I'm hoping that this still works in my favor. But it was super cute. So I have my back panel completed, and I have done a little bit of research, and I'm not finding exactly what I'm looking for as far as somebody else who has done this before. And again, I've already preferenced with the fact that I am not a knitter, so I don't know all the knitting rules outside of what I've looked up and what, great facts I've gotten from people in the comments. So I'm going to do this in a way that makes sense in my brain as a sewist. It might be wrong. It might work. It might not work. So I'm just going to work through the process. And if it does work, I'll finish the video. And if it doesn't work, I'll keep searching and find something else. So I'm going to start with the front panel, starting from the shoulder. My issue here, what I'm looking for that I can't seem to find, is I want to do a hood. So in my mind and what I know about knitting, I need to not connect this front portion of the garments. So like the other garment that we did previously was connected all the way to the center, and then the other shoulder was connected all the way to the center. But you need to leave some of those stitches open so that you can attach the hood all the way to the front, all the way to the front. So you will have a hood that goes up and all the way over. So I'm thinking my plan is I'm going to close up the shoulder for a bit, and then I'm going to start a chain stitch that goes to the center and then knit down, and then then knit left to right going down. That way I will still have that width in the front, and maybe I will do one row and then add like a stitch, and then do one row and then add a stitch. I'm thinking this through in my head. We'll see how it goes. I have kind of showed you guys this already on a separate video, like maybe two videos already, but I'm gonna put it here so you ain't gotta go nowhere else. This is my shoulder, and I want to split it in half so that I can have a left panel and a right panel. So I'm going to stitch continuously from the back through the front bodice. So what you see here is I put some pins here so I know where to stop. I have my working yarn on my right side. That's where I ended. And I am going to continue my basket weave. I think this is called a basket weave, honestly, y'all. My basket weave stitch just on the one side where the working yarn is continued. So there's my first yarn, my first loop, which is just a standard one. And then you're going to skip and go to your loop on the left and then cross over, almost messed up there, and do the loop on the right. Again, pull your yarn in the direction that you're working in so that it's easy to pull through. So I did the loop on the left, and then you take the loop on the right, pull it over, across it, and then make a new loop. And then here is my last loop. And I came to the realization that, okay, I don't really know exactly how to make the chain stitch that I was thinking. I'm like, maybe I need one extra row of stitching to hold this. So I went back and did um, another row. So I made that first loop by itself. I'm going to take the loop on the right and then pull the loop on the left and pull it through. So we're doing the opposite since we're going back the opposite direction. So loop on the right goes first, loop on the left goes over and pulls the working yarn through, and then we go again, loop on the right, and then you have the loop on the left getting pulled through. So because I split this, I no longer have an even number of loops. So when I decided that I was going to add stitches, I only added 2 originally, but I went back and I added 3. So I would have 2 loops, one on each end of this that are just the straight regular stitches, and then you have the even number of loops in between those. So you have my first loop there, the loop on the left, I'm threading it first, and then the loop on the right, I'm pulling it through. It's getting a little confusing. Pull the thread out the way for you guys. So loop on the left, loop on the right. You're going to pull over the left and then pull the working yarn through. And you have 2 more here. You're going to pull the loop on the left, loop on the right. We're going to go over the left and then pull the working yarn through. And then I believe right here, once I get the length situated and make sure that nothing is too tight, I kind of just made like a slip knot to start the chain. And I had to think about it. You'll see me kind of pausing here for a second because I don't know exactly the way to do this, but I just decided to make a chain there. And I'm like, we'll see kind of how this goes. So I only made a chain of 2. I told you guys that, but I should have made 3. I ended up going back and fixing this. So you have the first chain, and then you have your second, and then I did a row of stitching. So I'm going to loop the working yarn through the first one, and I'm just doing regular stitches, not the crisscross. Just do these 2 loops, and then I'm going to go back by looping that first loop again because I want my working yarn to go back to the end. So I am going to eventually, sorry, I'm like, what did I do? Trying to make a little curve here. You can see how it kind of dropped down, and you think about how your jackets are made. That's your front neck drop where your hood joins your front body. So we're going to make a yarn here. We're going to flip our yarn the other direction. Make 1 loop and then another loop. So now your working yarn is at the end, and now you can go back to your basket weave. So you're going to make the first loop, which this loop is now going to be just a straight loop. Your next 2 loops, you're going to take your right loop first, and then the left loop will pull over the right, and then get a working yarn, pull through it, and then you have your next 2 loops. Once I get this in there and the length is correct, your next 2 loops, the right loop goes first, left loop over the right, and pull the working yarn through. Next 2 loops, right loop first, left loop is over the right loop, just like that. These loops is a little bit too big. So now we have this is where I realized, like, oh yeah, I should have made 3 loops instead of 2. So eventually I went back and added that 3rd loop so I would get my last crisscross, and then my last stitch on the right side will just be a regular stitch. All right, here is half. I have like 2 more rows to go before I think I need to cast off. And my intention was to make a little dip, if you can see this here, a little dip here so that I can attach the hood and it'll have a little space there. So this is the other half. It'll be a little overlap. We'll see how this goes. I don't know. All right, here is the second half of the front. So we're going to make a loop and we're going to pull it through the first loop that's on the back of the garment. You want to make sure your tail is to the outside of the garment, to the right of the garment. You want to make sure your loop is not too big. And then we're going to start threading the working yarn through the empty loops on the left side of the garment. So we're going to start with the crisscross again. The right side is going to go first. The left side is going to go second. The right one in this direction. The right one is going to be pulled, and then the left one is going to be pulled over the right one. Don't get it confused. I don't know what happens if you get it confused, but I'm just going to say, don't get it confused because I don't know what your garment's going to look like. So, back to that. I had to do a little disclaimer. We're going to cross the one that is farthest away from where the working yarn is, and then we're going to cross the next one. Here's another close-up of me adding the stitches. This side I immediately added 3 because I realized on the other side that I needed it. So I made a chain stitch here of 3 loops, and then I'm going to use my working yarn to make 3 loops, like a first row, kind of how we did it at the hem. So I'm going to use the loops there to make 3 loops, and then I'm going to knit another row so that the working yarn is all the way at the outside. And you see how it's like sitting a little bit higher than the rest of the loops, but I don't know. I didn't care. I'm like, well, I don't think it's going to make that huge of a difference. So I knit the 3 loops I just created so that my working yarn would be all the way back on the right or on the end, wherever you end up. And then now I'm going to go back and forth with my blanket stitches again. Here are the blanket stitches. One more again. I feel like I'm just going to show them to you every time I recorded them because I feel like it's kind of difficult to understand. On this side, the left stitch is going first because I'm going the opposite direction. So once you get your little 3 there, you're going to hit the left stitch, and then you're going to hit the right stitch. Make sure that they are crisscrossing. You have your 2, you got your left stitch first, and then you got your right stitch second. And then you just keep doing this all the way until you get to the hem, just like you did the front. I feel like we're 20 minutes into the video, so I think I can start fast forwarding this little part here for a second. Hopefully, prayerfully, let me know if you still need more help or more of a close-up on this part of the garment. But my jacket again was 29 inches, so I needed to knit this side until it's 29 inches or pretty dang on close. So that's just what I'm doing. All right, I don't know why the color on my camera is being mad weird, but this is my back panel and my 2 front panels. I need to cast off, so I will show you what that looks like again. I've done this in other videos, but just in case you need to see it again, here it is. I watched quite a few different videos about like making a crochet hood like garment, but I get confused when the crochet noodles and things get involved, and there wasn't any videos about hand knitting a hood. So I just thought I would put 2 and 2 together with what I know from sewing and what I have seen so far in different videos as far as making a hood. One video I saw, she did 20 rows of stitching for the hood. Later on, I kind of feel like this was kind of a lot, but it was like a big hood, but whatever. So here you'll see me putting the rows in. I actually did not have enough here for 20 loops. It ended up being like 15, and I had to count them a few times because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss any of them while I was looping because it was really hard. They were like hiding behind one another. And for this, I was like, I'm going to save myself the pain and I'm just going to do regular stitches, not the blanket stitch or the crisscrossing. So I did 20 rows and I actually had to like mark it, tack it, tack, or what do you call it? Tack it down on like a notepad. Like, okay, this is row 1. I'm on row 3 because I am horrible at counting stitches, which is the reason why I don't typically knit. I get distracted. I'm like, oh, is this row number 4 or is this row number 3? So this here is my 20 rows. I actually ran out of yarn, so I had to go get another yarn, so that would make 3. There is my end, and I'm like, I don't know how to finish this, so I'm just going to cast it off, which I kind of showed you guys in a different video. I forgot to record that part. So here is my cast off. I'm actually going to fold this in half so the right sides are together, and then I'm going to stitch it together the same way you would do like a side seam. So it is folded in half here. I made a knot kind of at the front, and then I just weave a long piece of yarn back and forth through the top layer and the bottom layer, basically making this like a rectangle. And then when I got to the end, I made another knot, and then I just cut the extra and I weaved the string inside the stitches. And here is the hood and my blanket stitch. So far I have used way more yarn than I thought. This takes up way more yarn than I thought, and the tension maybe is a little bit tight, or I need to account for more yarn for this type of stitch. Now that the hood is done, I'm going to go to my side seam so I can do that in the sleeve. These are my right sides together. I'm going to tie a knot at the end and start with a long piece of yarn from the bottom up, but I'm going to leave about 11 inches open so that I can do the sleeve kind of in around. This ended up being very difficult because I was still trying to do the blanket stitch. It looks like I lost the footage of stitching the side together, but I'm doing it the same way I've done in my other two videos, and I'll put those in the description so that you can watch those as well. I am starting my sleeve off the same way as in the other videos, just making loops here. I'm going to try to keep my loop number even so that I can continue to attempt the blanket stitch. I decided that I was going to do a row of the regular purl stitch so that it wouldn't be so crazy of a transition coming onto the sleeve. I still think it looks a little crazy, but I'm trying something new. I got to the end of my yarn, so I had to tie on some more yarn that's attached to my actual ball of yarn. So that's what I'm doing just here off to the side so that I can continue the sleeve. And I'd use so much yarn in the sleeve, guys. I ran out of yarn again and I gave up on finishing it. So I'm just going to show you all the pictures. But we're going to make this sleeve and then we're going to wrap it up. I'm gonna continue the sleeve the way we did it all the other ways, except for this isn't a circle. So it took me a second to figure out the best way to do this. So I am still skipping one stitch and then pulling the stitch that I skipped across the front. So I have two stitches. I am threading the stitch on the right first and then pulling the left stitch over the right and then using the working yarn to thread it. So here at the end, I was a little confused at first and I'm like, how can I continue this? So I tried going back, like knitting one way and then going back and knitting the opposite way. But it got really, really confusing. So eventually I just went back to the two stitches, pulling the right stitch first and then pulling the left over the right to continue. When I started this project, I wasn't thinking about the blanket stitch, but when I was doing some research, I realized I didn't see anyone else doing any different type of stitches, and this is probably why. It took me so much yarn, and I'm just like looking at the ball dwindling and dwindling. This ball of yarn has 72 yards in it. I finished the hood. I did probably about 10 rows on the hood, and I finished the sides together, and then I finished one sleeve, and then I finished about a half of another sleeve, and I ran out of yarn. I'm like, why is this taking so much? I decided I wanted the cuff to be a little bit tighter, so I saw where you can reduce your stitches by putting two stitches together, and then you're going to pull your working through yarn through to create one stitch. So I did that on the sleeve that I did finish. I did that and I kind of worked my way around, and then once I got it down, it felt like pretty snug already because this is so thick. So I didn't do this again. I just did it one time around to reduce the number of stitches, and then I did about 3 or 4 stitches down so that I would have like a cuff. You can't really see it on the actual garment, but it is a slimmer than the rest of the sleeve. Okay, I realized I took so much fabric to make that sleeve, about 24 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and just cast off, and I'm going to use the same method as before. Make one loop, make another loop, pull the first loop over the second, and repeat. Some of my loops were coming undone, so you'll see me fixing them here. But same thing as apply. Make a new loop, pull the second loop into the first loop and repeat all the way until you get till the end. And if you're confused, I have some slowed down versions of this on my channel, and I'll make sure to link them so that you can see them up close and personal and be able to study. When I get done with all of my loops, I'm going to cut my tail. I'm going to pull it through, make it tight, and sometimes I'll create a knot, but I felt like this was pretty secure. And then I'm just going to thread this tail of my yarn through my sleeve opening. And yeah, I am pretty much complete with this jacket, outside of the fact that I ran out of yarn. So I did not finish the other sleeve, and I'm just like, y'all, I'm not going back to the store again. So here's the jacket. The hood came out super cute for someone who is not a knitter, and I've never done this before. Yeah, this is the full jacket with my half a sleeve over there. So I used 3 skeins of yarn, and I didn't finish the sleeve. Maybe I could have did a little less on the hood, but I don't know, y'all. I'm tired now. But thanks so much for watching my video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll know when I post new videos. And please leave me comments and feedback below. But until the next video, bye.